capability you guys want.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't mean to cut questions off here, but Scott has quite a bit more material to cover. And if I could, again, we do encourage questions. For today's purposes, I would particularly encourage questions that relate to the version 2 abilities and if there are questions about the interface on version 2. You know, general modeling questions. Not to say that we've had any that are inappropriate here, but for the sake of time and covering the remainder of the BEopt version 2 capabilities, I think we probably need to proceed here.
Yep. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go to the site input screen here and show a few of the new changes here. The first thing to show off now is that we have the ability to include incentives in our analysis. They are PV and whole house efficiency incentives. And we've got quite a lot of flexibility around there. A checkbox, a green checkbox appears when one of those has been defined so that you know without having to open up the dialog whether you have any incentives defined. It's worth pointing out that on the efficiency side, like I said, the capability is for whole house efficiency programs. We recognize that there are a lot of sort of measure-by-measure incentive programs out there where put in this technology and you get a rebate, or put in this other technology and you get another rebate. But we are not currently addressing that. We absolutely have plans to add that capability into BEopt, but at this point, this is really addressing whole house efficiency incentive programs. So I'm going to go ahead and actually show the PV one for simplification here. And so when you open it up, you have the ability to specify both tax credits and or rebates. For either one of these, you can specify them for different entities. So tax credits, you can do federal or state. If I click on rebates, you can do federal, state, utility, or other. So you can keep that information separated. And for any given entity, we actually have quite a lot of flexibility to be able to define different types of incentive programs. You can enable one or more types of incentives. So, for example, right now what we're showing is the federal U.S. Tax credit for PV, 30% of capital cost. If, for example, there was a kicker such that, let's say, if you put in PV, you get $1,000 plus 30% of capital costs, you could do that. You can also specify a max amount. So let's say only up to $5,000. You can do that. You can see that you can also specify things in terms of capacity of the PV system, as well as performance, some sort of cents or dollars per kilowatt hour, potentially over multiple years. You could even define that type of incentive as well. Beyond that, in fact, you could even go more detailed, and we have the ability to define for any given type tiers. So at the moment, this is 30% of capital cost regardless of how big your PV system is. You could, in fact, click this button here, define tiers, and you could say, well, actually, so starting at 0 kW, maybe you do get that 30%, and then you could create another tier, and you could say, but as soon as I get over a 5 kW system, perhaps it drops to 20% of capital cost. And you can see a graphic that represents that tier structure. You could also make it a ramp instead of a flat tier. So there's a lot of capability to define different incentive programs, either existing programs, or if you're evaluating or designing an incentive program yourself, you can investigate those types of situations. And all of this capability is also available on the whole house efficiency dialog as well. We can again do it based on simulated performance, so you could get cents per kilowatt hours of saved energy for electricity or natural gas, for example. On this screen also, one thing we added is these OpenEI utility rates. OpenEI is a website put together by NREL. It stands for Open Energy Information, and they're essentially trying to make lots of data and information available having anything to do with energy. And often they have databases and APIs and ways that you can interact with this data. And one of the things they have in their OpenEI website are utility rates for thousands of utilities around the country. And so we're able to bring that information into BEopt. So at the moment, this drop-down shows IOU utilities only, and so you can go through this list and you can pick out an IOU utility and see the different rates that are available. These rates can include demand charges, tiered rates, time of use. They have quite a lot of flexibility in the way that they can be defined. And they are sort of a wiki-style website, so they are updated over time, and if you notice mistakes, you can fix them right there in the system, so it's a lot of flexibility there. If I take off IOUs, it's updating. Hopefully I didn't break something, but there's a lot of non-IOUs available. It becomes a pretty big drop-down, and it's not looking so good. Hopefully my computer's just slow. Oh, there we go. So there's a huge list of entities. And in fact, go ahead and just put the IOUs back on. You can also look up by zip code. So for example, if I put in a Colorado zip code, I get the Public Service Colorado, Company of Colorado, and some of the rates that are available here. And you can select the one that you want to use. There's also a way, if you click on this button, that you can view the data in the rate. It takes you to the OpenEI website, and you can view that information to see what BEopt's using in its calculation. And the last thing I'll mention on this screen is we've also made it a little bit easier to deal with weather files. So we now have a little button here that says Download Weather Files, where you can browse, and it's based on sort of continent and country, and you can check multiples. You can download all the U.S. ones. Might take a little while, but you'll go through them all, so that you can quickly get new weather files from the Energy Plus website directly into BEopt. And lastly, there's a little button here that for the selected weather file that you have, the selected location, you can actually click this, and it opens up another little screen where you can visualize for every hour of the year, for all the different weather variables that are in the info file, what the weather looks like. So it's a little add-on.
Scroll up.
Scroll up?
Yeah, scroll bar.
There's no scroll bar.
You can scroll up.
What are you talking about?
Oh, it's not even showing on your screen. Sorry. The display's a little bit cut off. There's multiple.
This is everything.
That's cut off on my screen. Never mind.
So these are all the variables that are available in the weather file, and you can look at relative humidity, and you can zoom in, and it's a pretty rich interface to investigate. And you'll see that it's the same interface that we use for showing hourly output data for any of our boating simulations as well. So we made that available for weather files too.